Here are the 10 strangest borders in the world. Number 10, Portugal and Spain border. The Portugal and Spain border is one of the oldest geopolitical borders in the world. The current demarcation is almost identical to that defined in 1297 by the Treaty of Alcanices. The Portugal and Spain border is 1,234 kilometers long and is the longest uninterrupted border within the European Union, being free of border control since 1995 March 26, the effective date of the Schengen Agreement, with a few temporary exceptions such as in the 2020 lockdown caused by the COVID-19 pandemic. A microstate existed previously on the border called Coto Misto. Portugal and Spain signed the Schengen Agreement in 1991 by June. This came into effect on 1995 March 26, making Portugal and Spain part of the Schengen area and thus their boundary became an open border. A zip line across the border exists between Sanlúcar de Guadiana in Spain and Alcádim in Portugal. It is the first and currently only zip line over an international border. Number 9, China and Nepal border. The China and Nepal border is the international boundary between the Tibet Autonomous Region of the People's Republic of China and Federal Democratic Republic of Nepal. It is 1,389 kilometers in length and runs in a northwest to southeast direction along the Himalayan mountain range including Mount Everest, the world's highest mountain. The boundaries of this particular border have changed dramatically over time, especially when considering relatively recent events such as the annexation of Tibet in 1949. However, some of the most significant developments of modern times would be the signing of the Agreement on Maintaining Friendly Relations between the People's Republic of China and the Kingdom of Nepal in 1956 and the Sino-Nepalese Treaty of Peace and Friendship in 1960, both of which formally recognized Tibet as a part of China and confirmed the limits of the countries of China and Nepal as they are known today. In 2012, Nepal and China agreed to open new ports of entry to a total of 6 official ports. 3 of the ports are designated as international ports while 3 others are only designated for bilateral trade. Number 8, Slovakia, Austria and Hungary border. Austria, Slovakia and Hungary share a tri-border point, located near the village of Deutsch-Jarndorf in Austria, about 25 kilometers southeast of Vienna. This area is significant because it represents the convergence of these 3 countries in Central Europe. The tri-border point is a geographical location where the borders of Austria, Slovakia and Hungary meet. The tri-border point itself is marked by a monument where visitors can stand in 3 countries simultaneously. The area around this point is known for its historical significance and picturesque landscapes. Among the most inspiring art installations of the aptly named Zsobor Park, simply translated as a sculpture park in Hungarian, is a triangular picnic table purportedly spanning across 3 countries where a Hungarian, an Austrian and a Slovak can all eat and converse without ever leaving the comfort of their home nations. Nevertheless, the exact point where the 3 countries actually meet is marked by a small obelisk whose each of its 3 sides faces its respective country, bearing the first letter of the state's native name. Number 7, Morocco and Spain, Peñón de Vélez de la Gomera. Peñón de Vélez de la Gomera is a Spanish exclave and rocky tidal island in the western Mediterranean Sea connected to the Moroccan shore by a sandy isthmus. It is also connected to a smaller islet to the east, La Isleta, by a rocky isthmus. The tidal island was named Hajar Badis, Rock of Badis, and was connected to the town of Badis. Vélez de la Gomera along with La Isleta, is a pre-modern overseas possession known as a Plaza de Soberanía. It is administered by the Spanish central government and has a population consisting only of a small number of Spanish military personnel. Its border with Morocco is 80 meters long, making it one of the shortest international borders in the world. Peñón de Vélez de la Gomera is located 119 kilometers southeast of Ceuta. It was a natural island in the Alborán Sea until 1930, when a huge thunderstorm washed large quantities of sand into the short channel between the island and the African continent. The channel was turned into a tombolo and the island became a peninsula connected to the Moroccan coast by an 85 meters long sandy isthmus, which is the world's shortest single land border segment, with a length of 400 meters. Number 6, Diomede Islands. The Russian island of Big Diomede, part of Chukotka. The U.S. island of Little Diomede, part of Alaska. The Diomede Islands are located in the middle of the Bering Strait between mainland Alaska and Siberia. Because they are separated by the International Date Line, Big Diomede is almost a day ahead of Little Diomede, but not completely, due to locally defined time zones. Big Diomede is only 21 hours ahead of Little Diomede, 20 in summer. Because of this, the islands are sometimes called Tomorrow Island, thus Big Diomede, and Yesterday Island, thus Little Diomede. The islands are separated by an international border, which also defines the international date line in that area about 2 kilometers from each island, at 168 degrees 58 minutes, and 37 seconds west. At their closest points, the two islands are about 3.8 kilometers apart. The small habitation on Little Diomede Island is centered on the west side of the island at the village of Diomede. Big Diomede Island is the easternmost point of Russia. The Diomede Islands are often mentioned as likely intermediate stops for the hypothetical bridge or tunnel, Bering Strait crossing, spanning the Bering Strait. During winter, an ice bridge usually spans the distance between these two islands. At these times, it is theoretically possible, although not legal, since travel between the two islands is forbidden, to walk between the United States and Russia. Number 5. Bertawil. Bertawil is along the border between Egypt and Sudan, which is uninhabited and claimed by neither country. When spoken of in association with the neighboring Halab Triangle, it is sometimes referred to as the Bertawil Triangle. Despite the area's quadrilateral shape, the two regions border at a quadripoint. Its unclaimed status results from a discrepancy between the straight political boundary between Egypt and Sudan established in 1899, and the irregular administrative boundary established in 1902. Egypt asserts the political boundary, and Sudan asserts the administrative boundary, with the result that the Halab Triangle is claimed by both and Bertawil by neither. In 2014, author Alistair Bonnet described Bertawil as the only place on Earth that was habitable but was not claimed by any recognized government. Egypt claims the original border from 1899, the 22nd parallel, which would place the Halab Triangle within Egypt and the Bertawil area within Sudan. Sudan, however, claims the administrative border of 1902, which would put Halab within Sudan, and Bertawil within Egypt. As a result, both states claim Halab and neither claims the much less valuable Bertawil area, which is only a tenth the size and has no permanent settlements or access to the sea. There is no basis in international law for either Sudan or Egypt to claim both territories, and neither nation is willing to cede Halab. With no recognized third state claiming the neglected area, Bertawil is one of the few land areas of the world not claimed by any recognized state. Number 4. Netherlands and Belgium border. The Belgium and Netherlands border separates Belgium and the Netherlands and is 450 kilometers long. Belgium and the Netherlands are part of the Schengen area. This means there are no permanent border controls at this border, although the controls between Belgium and the Netherlands had been removed well before the Schengen Treaty was signed, as a result of the Benelux Union being signed in 1944 and ratified in 1947. Borrel-Hertog is an enclave, a chunk of Belgium completely surrounded by the Netherlands. The main Dutch-Belgian border lies nearly 5 kilometers to the south of here. Borrel isn't a simple enclave either. It is a cluster of 22 different Belgian land parcels inside the Netherlands. And inside two of the larger Belgian enclaves are 7 Dutch counter-enclaves, an enclave within another enclave. Pockets of the Netherlands nested inside Belgium, nestled inside the Netherlands. At least 2 border changes have occurred in recent history with regard to the Belgium-Netherlands border. Number 3, the Korean DMZ, North Korea and South Korea. The Korean Demilitarized Zone is a heavily militarized strip of land running across the Korean peninsula near the 38th parallel north. The Demilitarized Zone, DMZ, is a border barrier that divides the peninsula roughly in half. It was established to serve as a buffer zone between the countries of North Korea and South Korea under the provisions of the Korean Armistice Agreement in 1953, an agreement between North Korea, China and the United Nations. Command. The DMZ is 250 kilometers long and about 4 kilometers wide. There have been various incidents in and around the DMZ, with military and civilian casualties on both sides. Within the DMZ is a meeting point between the two nations where negotiations take place, the Small Joint Security Area, JSA, near the western end of the zone. The Korean Demilitarized Zone intersects but does not follow the 38th parallel north, which was the border before the Korean War. It crosses the parallel on an angle, with the west end of the DMZ lying south of the parallel and the east end lying north of it. Though the zone itself is demilitarized, the zone's borders on both sides are some of the most heavily militarized borders in the world. The Northern Limit Line, or NLL, is the disputed maritime demarcation line between North and South Korea in the Yellow Sea, not agreed in the armistice. The coastline and islands on both sides of the NLL are also heavily militarized. Number 2, Hotel Arbès, France and Switzerland. The Hotel Arbès is a hotel that straddles the international border between France and Switzerland in the tiny village of La Cour, which is itself divided by the boundary. Built by a private landowner and businessman specially to take advantage of an impending border adjustment between the two countries, the structure was originally used as a grocery store, its Swiss portion, and a pub, the French half. Today, the entire building houses a hotel, whose dining room, kitchen and several rooms are bisected by the boundary. The unusual situation of the Hotel Arbès grew out of a dispute between France and Switzerland over possession of the Vallée des Dappes, just south and west of the tiny town of La Cour. After several attempts to acquire the area were firmly rebuffed by the Swiss, France decided in 1862 to offer a nearby section of its own territory, comparable in size, in exchange. The Swiss agreed, and a treaty was accordingly signed in Bern, by which slightly less than 8 square kilometers changed hands. While La Cour had previously been located entirely inside France, the new boundary was slated to cut the village, including some residences and a pub, in half. The treaty stipulated that any already existing structure bisected by the border was to be left undisturbed, and this gave one local businessman an idea. Today, the Franco-Swiss border passes through the kitchen, dining room, hallway and several rooms of the Hotel Arbès. And today, the Hotel Arbès is operated by the French company Cyril Arbès Franco, Suisse, which pays taxes equally to both countries. When the French government banned smoking in French pubs and restaurants in 2008, the rule was applied in both the Swiss and French sides of the dining room. And number 1, Haskell Free Library and Opera, USA and Canada. The Haskell Free Library and Opera House is a Victorian building that straddles the Canada-United States border in Rock Island, now part of Stansted, Quebec, and Derby Line, Vermont, respectively. The Opera House opened on June 7, 1904, having deliberately been built on the international border. It was declared a heritage building by both countries in the 1970s and 1980s. This library has 2 different addresses. The Haskell Free Library and Opera House was a gift from Martha Stewart Haskell and her son Horace Stewart Haskell. It was built in memory of her parents Catherine and Horace Stewart and her husband Carlos Freeman Haskell. The Haskells wanted Canadians and Americans to have equal access to the library and opera house, and so they chose to build on the border. The Haskell family later donated the building to the towns of Derby Line and Rock Island in Haskell's memory. It is run by a private international board of 4 American and 3 Canadian directors. The library collection and the opera stage are located in Stansted, but the main entrance and most opera seats are located in Derby Line. Because of this, the Haskell is sometimes called the only library in the USA with no books and the only opera house in the USA with no stage. There is no entrance from Canada, however, there is an emergency exit on the Canadian side of the building. All patrons and visitors must use the US entrance to access the building. Patrons from Canada are permitted to enter the United States door without needing to report to customs by using a prescribed route through the sidewalk of Rue Church Street, provided that they return to Canada immediately upon leaving the building using the same route. A thick black line runs beneath the seats of the Opera House and diagonally across the center of the library's reading room to mark the Canada-United States border. The stage and half of the seats are in Canada, the remainder of the Opera Hall is in the US. The building has different postal codes and different telephone area codes.